Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you another Goosebumps talk type of video, but it's more a tag video. And the subject is going to be the Mount Rushmore of Goosebumps. Now, this is going to vary from person to person, whoever decides to participate in the tag, but I want to kick it off by introducing the topic on which stories, episodes, short stories, books, comic adaptations, movies, etc. are on my Mount Rushmore. And I want to see some video responses from other YouTubers, and if you're just a commenter that doesn't make videos, I challenge you as well to post a comment of your Mount Rushmore in the comment section of this video or in videos that other people decide to make. And the 4 people I'm tagging are Michael Goosebumps fan, Monster Blood, BD Horror, and Goosebumps for Dummies. Those are the 4 people I'm tagging to make an official video on this subject. And then you can go on and tag as many people as you want. I don't care. Do what you like. But I'm tagging you and I challenge you to make a video on this topic. Now, that being said, I've comprised my Mount Rushmore, and I've pretty much mentioned this to people in the past or have alluded to on Discord what these are. But I wanted to make a video about it to share it with you all that aren't on Discord and to kind of immortalize it, because I love these stories from Goosebumps and I just love talking about them. So, with that being said, let's start it off. So the Mount Rushmore, in case you don't know what the Mount Rushmore monument is, I think it's over in the Black Hills of like South Dakota, and it features 4 presidents, which are George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Teddy Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. And coming up with this theme, I try to imagine which one or which president feels more congruent with what I chose to be put on that placement there. But like the founding father, for example, like George Washington, I guess we can start there. The first president, the one that started it all. I wanted to pick the one I can remember loving the earliest. And this actually was my gateway to the series. This was the first thing I was ever introduced to in Goosebumps, and that is the Haunted Mask. I pulled up the VHS for the episode, but I also put up the book because I'm kind of cheating here. The Haunted Mask would be my George Washington. Okay. This story is so timeless. I can remember as a little kid not understanding the gravity of Carly Beth's situation, who's the protagonist of the story. But over the years growing up, I got to grow up with her story. And I got to learn more and more details every year when I came back to rewatch the episode for Halloween or reread the book throughout many stages of my life. Carly Beth is just one of those characters that stick with you. And what she goes through in the story is just absolutely riveting. With the episode, this is what started it all for me. And I know in the book versus episode, I said the book was slightly better if I had a preference, but honestly, I think these are deadlocked. But I want to talk about the episode here because this just immortalizes how timeless this story is. You can take Goosebumps out of it and just call it The Haunted Mask, release it by itself. And I think it would be a classic in children's literature. It's so creative, one of the most unique premises in Goosebumps history. The mask itself, which I pulled from my collection I got recently from around Christmas time. When I was a kid, all I wanted was to own this mask. I dreamed many dreams, many nightmares even, of this mask, but I also had dreams of me just going into a mask store and buying this and fantasizing about living in Carly Beth's shoes. And that just has this has stuck with me. It's hard to describe, but you know, the love of the look of the mask and the concept alone has guided my love for it over the years. But what I think really carries it through is the story itself. You have a girl struggling to be in her own shoes, wanting to experiment and do something different to show other people that she's, you know, not exactly who they think she is. But the problem with that is that she goes through this harrowing journey where she starts to lose herself and has to grow to love who she actually is, and comes to the realization that she went about everything she planned in the wrong way. And she comes out better on top of it. Not to mention, it doesn't hurt to have good body horror. And it doesn't mention to have good concepts and good themes interweaving the story. But the ending is one of the most powerful climaxes in the history of Goosebumps, where she's finally able to conquer the evil that started to possess her and replace it with the love of her family and friends. And that, to me, is the reason why the Haunted Mask is just the pinnacle Goosebumps story. In my opinion, Slappy should have never been the mascot of Goosebumps. It should have been the Haunted Mask. We should have had a whole series designed around the shop owner and having different masks of a shop, talking, mask, whatever, that segue into their own stories. We should have had a Horrorland, but themed like the Haunted Mask. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. It's a shame, but what we've gotten over the years still proves the point that the Haunted Mask is one of the greatest franchises to ever come out of the series, because most of the books are solid, in my opinion. Not everybody's going to agree with that, but I love most of the books. But the episodes specifically offered one of the greatest duologies in the history of Goosebumps. Probably the best duology in Goosebumps, if you ask me, and easily one of the best duologies in kids' horror of all time. Which brings me to my Thomas Jefferson of my Mount Rushmore, which is the Haunted Mask 2 episode. I'm not talking about the book, I'm talking about the episode. This is genuinely perfect, in my opinion. This episode is fantastic. The changes that Neil Shusterman made to R.L. Stine's source material, from which was book 36 of the original 62, really shows that the TV show sometimes improved the source material. And this is one of the golden examples of that. The changes with Steve Boswell, the main character of this story, coinciding with the past experiences of Carly Beth. Now, Carly Beth comes in and out of the story being treated kind of like a co-protagonist, where there's a dual perspective going in and out of these two episodes, because this is a two-parter. It's one of the more intricate stories. The building off the first episode specifically, because that's, you got to take into account this is an episode building off of a previous episode, feels seamless. Now, there are some things about the locations that they had to do the mask shop, they had to change all that. Yeah, there are some plot things about Steve putting the mask on 3 times, but I kind of chalk that up to, since Steve put it on 3 times, we got to see more body horror in this episode. This episode scarred me as a kid. I had legitimate nightmares for many years, just fantasizing about what Steve went through on camera in this episode when his body's morphing into an old man. It's disgusting. And it's so great. It's so great. The dichotomy that this brings to the first Haunted Mask episode is that this is not talking about, somebody trying to find self-love in a new identity. This is about an identity, being kind of brought to the forefront and scrutinized, and brings a character to realize that, hey, maybe acting like this is not the way to go. It's a completely different story compared to the first one. And I think it works splendidly well. I love the look of the mask, which I have here as well. The aesthetics. I think this is probably one of my favorite things I'll ever own in my collection. I love the look of the old man mask here. The only criticisms I have, I wish there were spiders in the hair, which I might add some fake ones myself, but this is just pure nostalgia for me, right? But the story, Steve, coming to help Carly Beth in a time where he really didn't have to help her. He was given at least in the episode, he was given a proposition by Carly Beth's mask, who has possessed the shop owner, to have a get-out-of-jail-free card. All he has to do is help the mask take over Carly Beth, but he chooses the high road and chooses to save her when he didn't have to. He thought that he was going to be trapped in the mask, but at least Carly Beth will be okay, but he ends up being freed because of his good choice. And I love... I love the changes they made to side characters here. The humor's ramped up with Chuck Green, which is Steve Boswell's best friend character. It's one of my favorite Goosebumps side characters of all time. At least in the episode here, where he's Mafia Chuck. He has some funny one-liners. Just a fantastic episode. from start to finish. I can't really praise it highly enough. Now, I guess my Teddy Roosevelt, if we're going from left to right, would be, I guess, the book that some people don't expect to see on a Mount Rushmore. I guess I'll start that trend here. This is a book I've championed for many years. Ever since I read it recently, I think a few years back, I've been saying this is one of my favorite Goosebumps books of all time. I loved this book as a kid. I never realized how much I loved it until I read it as an adult. And since then, I've reread this book casually about 3 times. I have a poster of it on my back wall, just right next to my Haunted Mask 2 VHS poster. I love this book deeply. Are You Terrified Yet? For me, when I was younger, I grew up being able to put myself into Carly Beth's shoes. But with Craig, I feel like, from my specific, upbringing, right? And what I was, given, the hands of like having ADHD and social anxiety and stuff like that. Craig really emulates a lot of my personality. And I think a lot of the best ways. I was a new kid in middle school. I had pretty much to reset my entire friend basis I had in elementary school because I switched school zones. And I had an opportunity to make a new identity. That my old one, when I was in elementary school, I got beat up a lot. I got made fun of. I got teased. I didn't want that for myself, and I tried to make a new identity for myself, and I did. But even so, doing that, I learned to still like myself, and I grew kind of out of that when I got around 8th grade. But this is so relatable to me on a personal level, but I think Craig is easily one of the best Goosebumps protagonists ever in the whole series. Whether we're talking, original 62, series 2000, modern era, Craig is up there. One of the best written characters, one of the best monologues in the history of Goosebumps. He's so honest. He's honest about his fears. And you can see the irony in a situation where he's trying to, front an exterior to people where he's not afraid. And some people see through him, some people can't. And that adds some levity to the book. That adds some humor to it. And the stuff he goes through is terrifying. Like sticking your hand in a spider jar, with tarantulas inside of it. Or being put into a morgue where you have to go inside of a coffin with a real dead body. Right? And you realize that Craig is going through all this just to, prove to people that he is something when he should be proving that he's better than them. And he doesn't need their validation. And you see him get his revenge in the end. And the ending is one of the best, most satisfying endings in Goosebumps history. I can't praise this book enough. I love the atmosphere to it. I love the messages. I love how universal Craig can be. I think it's one of the more funnier Goosebumps books. It's just that perfect blend I look for in the series. I think this book is genuinely perfect. There's no real discernible flaws. With Haunted Mask, yeah, there's some disbelief with the floating mask bits. How that ties into the shop owner's origins don't really make sense all that much if you really want to sit down and think about it. But it makes enough sense thematically where I'm forgiving on it. Haunted Mask 2's episode. Him putting the mask on 3 times kind of negates the rules that the Haunted Mask series has traditionally set up. How he's able to free himself from the mask in the end. But it still fits thematically. So I could be forgiving. Here, I don't really have anything I have to be forgiving on. I think it's genuinely one of the 2 perfect ones. But it's my Teddy Roosevelt. And most people don't think that this would be on there for me, but it is. I love it deeply. But like my favorite president in real life, Abraham Lincoln, this is also my favorite Goosebumps book. And this is the last of my Mount Rushmore. And I love the creativity of this book. I love the main character. I love the emotions in the monologue that's presented in this book. I love the atmosphere, the time of year, the creativity of the monsters. I think this is one of Stein's best books he's ever made. And it's Werewolf Skin. Werewolf Skin is the final book, or the final Goosebumps thing on my Mount Rushmore. I think Alex Hunter is understandably one of the best written protagonists in Goosebumps history. His monologue is fantastic. The way he's able to go from his personality, to his memories, to his emotions about his family, to his fears of the situations going on. It's just perfectly done. The whole angle the story takes about, putting a kid in a situation where he's supposed to trust the two people that are supposed to unconditionally, be there for him while his parents are, gone on an assignment over in Europe, but his caregivers, his aunt and uncle, are struggling with addiction and struggling with something that they're trying to keep from him, and he accidentally uncovers it and realizes that it's up to him to actually save them. There's a lot of deep stuff that kids shouldn't really have to go through. And like I said, Werewolf Skin, the story, the concept is so unique because the way that these characters become werewolves, they have to put on these skins that they shed after the first time they become werewolves, and there's an addiction element to it where whenever there's a full moon, they feel this impulse to go put it on, and you have to kind of wean them off from doing it. And Alex meets some eclectic characters, which are all fun characters. Hannah, the side character in the story, is fun, and she brings a lot of ingenuity to the story. There's a fun mystery aspect with the next door neighbors that you don't know play a part in this or not. And when you get to those reveals, it feels like you get little bits and pieces all the way up until the very end. And the ending is so satisfying because it feels like the whole book was building up to this point, and it's one of the darkest endings in the whole series. It has its humor to it. It has its, heartfeltness to it. It has its deep layers to it. It's just a perfect packaged Goosebumps book. And it doesn't help, well, it does help, that the creativity and the imagination just put this to the next level. This is just the cornerstone of Goosebumps. All four of these are, in my opinion, the pillars of the series. Werewolf Skin, Are You Terrified Yet? In terms of the books. I know Werewolf Skin has an episode. I want to put it on here, but Werewolf Skin's book, Are You Terrified Yet's book, Haunted Mass 2's episode, in either order with this, but the Haunted Mass Booker episode. This is my Mount Rushmore of Goosebumps. So yeah, that's my video. All the people that I tagged, please, if you'd like to, I would love if you make a response to this. For people that like to comment, please let me know down in the comment section. What's your Mount Rushmore of Goosebumps? I'm dying to know, and I'll see you next time.